welcome to the Growth Whisperers Podcast, where everything, every week that Brad and I talk about is about building enduring great companies in good times, in exciting times, and sometimes potentially in bad times. No matter what, it's to endure. So I'm Kevin Lawrence here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I'm here with my co-host, Brad Giles, down in Perth, awesome Australia. Brad, how's it going?
Pretty good today. We say that a lot, I know.
We do. What do we? We need to expand our vocabulary.
I know.
Maybe we should just say it's dreadful. That would be fun. Like, no, I don't even want to say the words. It doesn't even feel good, and it's not usually true. Anyways,
no.
All right.
Look, you know what? Like, we're doing great work with great teams, and we're very fortunate to have the lives we have. So I think it's fair to say, broadly, we're fortunate, we're happy, we're lucky. Let's move on.
Yeah, most days are good days, but that's what we choose. And we are very, very fortunate to work with awesome people doing great things in the world. So, hey, before we jump into today's show, if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscribe button. Happy for you to give us a nice rating as well, especially if you consider if the show is good. So we're going to dig in today into an interesting topic, Brad. Yeah. It was up front. I talked about good times and bad times and uncertain times even. Today we're talking about...
Well, look, we had a chat before the show, and we're beginning to see a couple of interesting things coming through. The stock market has had an interesting run since the beginning of the year. Certainly in the tech sectors, we've seen some interesting times with some large changes in valuations. And I've got some clients in the tech sector, they're certainly talking about that. We're beginning to see it in some other areas of the economy. There's a war in the Ukraine, as we know. There's been a massive stimulus through most governments around the world in the COVID areas, and that's shot valuations up. There's, you go and buy or sell a secondhand car, it could be selling 30, 40% above what it was previously worth because of shortages and so forth. So, we're talking about, we're
talking about what goes up often comes down, at least catches a bit of a breather.
Yeah. So we
Especially
don't know.
It goes up, we don't
know, but we've seen enough recently to say maybe it's time to do an episode on the 7 actions for challenging economic times. Maybe it's time to start putting some nuts away for winter.
I don't know what that means now.
Bears! The squirrels.
That's squirrels.
Yeah.
Okay. I got it. Yeah. So I think, and the thing is, we always, Jim Collins calls it productive paranoia. We always have a good dose of productive paranoia and being ready for whatever comes. And now it's just a little more time to be a little more prepared. It's pretty clear on the horizon. Something funky is going on. And some people think we're already in recession in North America. Some of the I've been on a tear the last few weeks talking to a bunch of different CEOs about what they see in their businesses. And many businesses are showing signs of moving into recession. And thankfully, we work with many enduring great companies that have been around for 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, over 100 years, we have in our portfolio of clients. And within those, they've been through all kinds of economic downturns, all kinds and upturns. And I want to be clear, and I was talking to a CEO about this the other day, I think the best opportunities come in economic downturns.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like if you're on your game and you're focused and you have a strong team, a clear strategy, good preparation, it wipes out the weak players. Like I've learned, my first time I was through an economic downturn, I was concerned. And the first serious one that I experienced, really serious, is one, a little bit in 2000. And then 07, 8, 9 in that range, whatever it was, 08-ish.
Yeah.
And I was working a lot in the Middle East, and the downturn there was it was like a mountain slide. It was incredible. But the point of it is that but awesome opportunities come through for great operators, great disciplined operators with long-term perspectives do usually very, very well. So anyways, the good things will come. And, you know, the idea is with all the stuff going on, you're better to have a great plan B no matter what. It never hurts, as long as you don't slip into what I call, you know, a situation where you kind of create your own self-fulfilling prophecy of killing your business. And it's almost like there's a story of obviously sometimes we like to pick on accountants on this stuff, but you know, the accountant says we got to cut the marketing budget, which sometimes we all should say, you know, we got to cut the marketing budget, you know, we're spending too much and, you know, tough times are coming, so we better cut the budget. And then they cut the budget and then, yeah, lo and behold, sales slows down.
They never say we should cut the accounting budget, funnily enough.
It's weird how that works. It's very weird. Yes. But the point of it being is that, you know, sometimes you can anticipate a problem, overreact to a problem, and create a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you got to stay opportunistic. And that's one of the things I want to leave. You know, downturns are good for discipline, resetting systems, and everything. And as long as you aren't crazy over leveraged, it'll be great. And if you are crazy over leveraged, well, you know, it's interesting. I went back to one of my clients starting 9 months ago, and we were looking at his balance sheet, and I'm like, this is not okay. Yeah. Not in a boom time to have the balance sheet he had. And we started working on this aggressively 9 months ago, and he's in way better shape.
So he had a lot of debt is what you're implying there, right? Or he had a lot of liquidity.
He had a lot of debt, no liquidity,
right?
And he was in the shape to thrive if the economy boomed, not if it changed.
Yeah.
Like he had way too much success that was at risk. He wasn't structured right, which we and his team did. His team did most of the work. I don't want to take credit for it. Point of it is, there's lots of great things to do, and you got to continue to keep your eye on the horizon of opportunity. Is the
I just want to frame this, Kev. Every time we do a podcast, we start by saying we're all about building enduring great companies. So you can only have an enduring company if you survive. Okay.
Doesn't matter if you're great. If you if you don't survive, you can't endure.
Everything that we talk about is enduring. So you pick any one of these episodes, it's framed around.
Yes.
You've got to. So if you know, I remember in 2000, the tech crash, the tech bubble. And it didn't make any sense. Okay. Companies would come up with an idea and they'd raise money, and there was no underlying logic to what they were doing. There was no business model that had any sense to make money. And then they're the companies that all got wiped out. It is about making sure that we can survive and endure.
Yes. And usually it's about being a master of the fundamentals and the basics.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you have a fully 100% leveraged balance sheet, I mean, hopefully you're private equity backed or tapped into something else that has access to more cash. But if you're a family business that is fully leveraged, you're asking for trouble at the best of times. So anyway, we'll dig into that. But boys, basically, we can't predict the future, but we need to be ready. And you know, there's a great quote we got in here, and I believe this is from Warren Buffett. You know, when others are greedy, be fearful, and when they are fearful, be greedy. And right now, there has been a lot of greed in the market and a lot of, you know, capitalism at its best. And I love capitalism in lots of ways. But sooner or later that flips, and then you just need to be prepared to be always, you know, thinking differently than the herd. That's all. So there are awesome opportunities, but we got to be there on the other side. So let's start with our 7 points. Number one, you know, plan for the best. Look for those biggest opportunities and keep tuned into those. So it was interesting. Another great a shout out to BP. BP, you know who you are. Great strategic CEO, one of the best I've worked with in terms of strategy. And he and I had a chat last week, and we're talking about this, and he goes, "Man, I just see opportunity everywhere." And we start talking about it, and he's listing off, I'm not going to give away his playbook, but he's listing off, there's going to be big opportunities here, big opportunities here, big opportunities here, big opportunities here. and he's going through this massive list. And he's got a master plan. He can see, based on all the stuff he studies, where the opportunity is going to be. And he might not be right on all of it, but he's going to be right on some of it. But more importantly, he's going to continue to keep him and his teams tuned in onto that. So, the biggest thing we have to fear is fear and losing sight of opportunities, because that can be self-fulfilling. So, where can you be prepared to win? Where your competitors going to get weak? Like, where your competitors not going to be able to take care of customers, and you could easily acquire customers, or acquire the competitor who's already frail, and with a couple little nudges, they're going to be in harm's way, and you might be able to save them and help them out by buying them.
But don't weaken your balance sheet by doing that. Like, it's easy to get caught up in it. And I don't know BP, and I don't know his situation, but rule number one, you must endure, right?
Yeah, he's got the balance sheet covered. Yeah.
As you would expect. But don't be listening to this podcast thinking, oh, even though I've got a okay balance sheet, like, I'm going to be able to go leverage to the hilt and I'm going to acquire market share. I want to just point out one of the episodes we spoke about before, which is, if you're going to, in one of the episodes, we said that if you're going to acquire another business or something like that, an acquisition of some sort, you've got to look at it through the lens of gross profit. How will it change your gross profit margin? Is it going, because don't just buy it to get market share, because this customer might get wiped out, and maybe you can.
Focusing on market share is idiotic.
But so many people do it. We know that.
Because they don't know any better. You got to look at your gross margins and all the way down to bottom line profitability and how it's going to help you.
Yeah.
Who cares if you got share if you lose a bunch of money? Share is a volume game. It's like chasing revenue. It can be okay, but it's got to be calibrated with gross margin and bottom line profitability. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And so I think your point, though, is very important, Brad, is if your company's doing 100 million a year and you got 20 million in cash, you might do an acquisition with, 5 or 10, well, you wouldn't use all your own cash anyways, but you might, use 5 million of your cash for an acquisition. But if you're doing 750 million a year and you've only got 20 million in cash, you should probably hold on to that cash and try and build up a little bit more to give you a little more buffer. Again, every business has different metrics and numbers. Point of it being, you don't want to weaken yourself. You want to be able to hold through the market and make sure you got enough cash to get through to the next cycle.
So number 2, plan for the worst case. So
we covered off the positive and all the good stuff. Now we're going to flip the coin to where a lot of people go. Yeah.
It's the poop sandwich here, right? It's like starts good and then it's a bit squishy in the middle.
Jeez.
So plan for the worst case, right? So nobody knows what's going to happen. Economists don't, no. Kevin and I don't, but we're seeing some early signs that are making us say, start thinking about this. So think about, and this is the productive paranoia, think about what could happen and how will you react to that. Of course, be careful of self-fulfilling, creating your own demise, as Kevin already said. But maybe what if your revenues went down 20 or 30%? What if there was discounting happening that was driving your price down and you had to respond to that? Reconsider the key parts of your profit and loss around these types of changes, and how do you deal with that to survive, to endure, to get through the winter to the spring.
And you can look at other variables like, well, what if the cost of capital or interest rates goes up by 2 points or 4 points or 6 points? I don't know. Or employment goes up notably or down, or inflation goes up or down. Again, there's all these variables that impact maybe it's the price of oil, maybe it's the price of grain, price of steel, price of aluminum. Everyone's got different variables, price of transportation. But looking at all those variables that have an impact on your business, one of the companies you work with their CFO did a brilliant job, picked 6 main metrics like cost of capital, I think it was cost of oil, inflation and all that, and just model it out over the next 5 years. And the executive's going to make some best guesses of what they think.
Yeah.
They'll run scenarios. So that's, scenarios, P&L hit, and then CapEx. What can you defer or accelerate? Mm-hmm. Maybe there's CapEx, capital expenditures, that you can get done now if you think prices are going up, or you think you're going to gain notable benefits from that capital. Maybe you get it deployed now and, get all the financing locked up with the bank. Same thing with fundraising, accelerate your fundraising, get that done now potentially as well.
There's a lot of businesses through the pandemic that have been propped up or saved by the government.
Yep.
And they might not know it, but they are perhaps not in the strongest position. And any change in the environment, they might have been bad going into the pandemic. They got saved, and then coming out of it, if we go into some challenging times, they're not going to make it. So you've got to plan for the worst case and really be prepared for that.
Yeah, for sure. And we don't know if the government's going to continue to provide stimulus. I mean, in many cases, increasing rates to kind of cool the economy off, to destimulate the economy. The final thing I want to say in this, but don't forget to lead well and keep an eye on what's possible and the opportunities. Don't allow your culture to get all negative, right? You've got to deal with it and confront those ugly issues. You have to, but you can't allow yourself to become a negative, fearful culture, because again, that will do damage. So focus on those things, and then make sure you go back to what's possible.
Talk about the vision and the mission of the BHAG, where you're going, why you exist, all of the important things.
All that good stuff. All right. Next thing is to anticipate customer needs. Just step back. What's going to change? All these dynamics, where are the new needs or new demands going to come from? It's not rocket science, but there will be different things that pop up in the economy. And what can you think about it? Just go back to, masks during COVID, or trampolines or hot tubs during COVID. Who knew those would be hot items, or, toilet paper as it initially was.
Yeah.
And then, can just try stuff like try firing bullets or before cannonballs. If you got new ideas, just test them. Make sure you're seeing if the market responds.
Yeah, try little things before you bet the farm. And when customer needs change, maybe you can try something and it'll hit the sweet spot, or maybe it won't. Moving on to number 4, manage cash. Oh, cash is king, my friend.
Yes, and queen, yeah.
Yeah, and half of the regal court. So number 1, right? Watch out for bad paying customers. If you're in a business to business where you're providing terms to your customers in a retail environment, or it doesn't really matter so much. You're getting paid when you transact. Yeah. But if you're B2B, sometimes in these situations, your customers might not be managing their cash so well, and suddenly they were at 14 days, then 30, then 45, and it's slipping out. So you've got to keep a close eye on that. And then know, when do we put someone, doesn't matter who it is, onto stop credit? When do we say to them, we're not working with you anymore till you bring your payments up to date?
And be relentless about that. One of my clients that's the best at this stuff, he said, I've been through downturns with him, and he said his credit tightens up dramatically. His credit people become the most important people in the company.
Yeah.
Because if you don't get paid, that's more than you lose the profitability and the cost. Those are big losses. Okay.
So just on that point, we're going to building a really challenging situation for home builders at the moment. And what all the trades have done is they've tightened up their credit terms to the home builders. And so rather than the normal terms like 30 days and a month, they're now saying we get paid the same week that we do the work. And that's been a massive challenge for the home builders, as you can imagine.
But smart for the trades. Yep. Okay.
Yeah. So number 2, cash is king. So build a war chest. So we've been banging on this for 115 episodes. Yeah. Like you've got to have a lot of money put away for when the bad times come. That's the only way you can often survive.
Or easily accessible, as in massive amounts in equity in an asset you can easily and quickly refinance. Sure. Somehow you need to get it quickly, for sure. The thing is, just sell off excess stuff. If you've got extra inventory, or extra assets that aren't active, aren't needed, not core, again, use that, or at least inventory, manage it well now, especially if it's gotten a little bit loose. Okay, that's number 4. Managing the cash, it's critical. Cash is what allows you to endure and stick to your values through it all.
All right.
Have a plan for your A players. How are you going to keep the ones that you got? Because sometimes people get a little bit spooked, and you might need to get some new ones too. So plan for how you will keep your best people and keep them engaged, because if people haven't been through downturns, people can get really stressed by it. And a lot of people haven't. Our economy has been booming for a long time, as it has in most countries. And some people may have made some poor personal financial choices and be a little over leveraged, a little bit too excited and ambitious. So just be prepared for how you might need to do some special creative things to help out some of your A players. And who knows what it is. And then the most important, so that you don't have to do massive layoffs if it gets really bad, actively performance managing your B players, your toxic A's and your C's constantly. It's the time. I mean, you should have been doing it already, but in boom times, people let this stuff slide. How do you make sure you stay on top of it and performance manage that, and don't keep any underperformers in your system? At least, treat them respectfully and give them chances. But if it's not going to work, let's move on.
Let's move them on. And then number 6, ensure your core disciplines are tight. I live in a cyclical economy, mining-based economy, right? So it's always on the way up or on the way down. And what we say is that you lose money at the bottom and you lose money at the top, because things that you do. There's this one day in the middle of a cycle where it's this optimal environment where you can make money. It's a bit of it's a bit farcical. But the point being is that things get sloppy, disciplines get sloppy in a boom environment. And so what we want to do is to know that the way to survive, what to do is to bring those core disciplines tight. So that is the meeting rhythm, understanding the data, and understanding the priorities for everyone, and riding those disciplines, making sure that those things are getting done.
And even some of the cost disciplines that get loose sometimes as company scales, just staying tight. And every department has core disciplines, just back to the basics, and and thinking sometimes a little more responsibility. And then finally, if the worst happens, and again, hopefully this conversation is a waste of time and the worst doesn't, and it doesn't become a hardcore adjustment. But if and when it does come time to cut, there's lots of different strategies, and Brad and I have both seen, if you have to make a cut notably deeper than you think you need to, and do it once. Obviously, it's the last resort to need to cut people, ideally, if you truly live your values and value your people. But when there are cuts, it's hard and it's not fun at all. It's also a great incentive to make sure you're an A or an A+ player, for those of you listening out there who aren't the ones in charge, because then you don't get cut. We generally almost never cut the A+ or the A players, contrary to popular belief. We do everything we can to keep the best one, but cut harder than you think you need to, and ideally earlier. But the most important, cut based on your values. I remember it in the Middle East, and I will never remember this day the rest of my life, because I almost threw up in the boardroom, and I'm not joking. We had to make some serious cuts because that market was a landslide. It was incredible. And we went through, and I was running the flip chart with the chairman and all of the CEOs, chairman of the board and the CEOs in the room. And we're noting what our strategy was. The last one was people.
Yeah.
It was like managing inventory, managing payables, excess spending, executive compensation, actually bonuses, executive conversation, basically, but cutting employees was the last one, and we didn't have to. And because they stuck to their values, they wanted to take care of their people that have been loyal to them. And that's what you want to be able to do, but you have to make a lot of other decisions right not to have to do it. And sometimes you can't avoid it.
Everyone who's been through that challenging situation and come, I'll say, close to the wire, always wish they had cut harder and earlier. You speak to them, and I've spoken to a lot of people through that. They always have that wish. Like you said, cut based on your values, And yeah, know that through those cuts, know what will happen on the other side. Think about 3, 6, 12 months. What does it look like? And why are we making these tough choices?
It's fascinating having been through organizations that have had to make some of these cuts, and it's not fun and never desired, but it's actually kind of good for the organization and the soul. It freshens things up. It's shocking how all of the work still gets done.
Yeah.
Like always, all the work gets done. It's also why I'm a freak about trying to manage SG&A growth or overhead growth.
Yeah.
Because when your overhead grows too fast, it also has to get cut. And it's not fun at all. So if the worst case happens, just stare the problem in the face and be aggressive about it. And then you can rebuild stronger, but hopefully we don't get there. So 7 actions to deal with the potential of an unhealthy economy, or an economy that fades for a little bit. So number 1, plan for the best. Look for the big opportunities and how you're going to thrive and capitalize on it. Keep your eyes on the prize. And then also plan for the worst. What do you got to do to look at scenarios to make sure that your income statement and balance sheet can handle it, so you can come out the other side and get to benefit into the next cycle? Anticipate customer needs, predict what's going to happen, and be prepared. What's the next version of the masks that is going to go through the roof in terms of demand? And then cash is king. Start managing it now, be on it, build it up. Brad, you want to continue on there?
And sell stuff. Number 5,
yes.
Have a plan for A players. How are you going to keep A players? How are you going to acquire A players from your competition when your competition get into trouble, if they do? Number 6, ensure your disciplines are tight. Go back to meeting rhythms, priorities, getting the right data, go back to the basics. And then finally, if the worst happens, cut hard and cut early. Make sure that you're doing the right thing and that you're connecting to your values and you have a longer term plan. What a good chat, Kevin, today. Hopefully someone has got some value out of this. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know we're seeing enough signs to talk about it. So this has been the Growth Whisperers. We have interesting, and some might say worthy of reading newsletters, each of us. Kevin's is at lawrenceandco.com. Mine is at evolutionpartners.com.au. And also, if you've enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe and maybe even rate the podcast. It's been great to chat to you today. Look forward to chatting to you again next week.